All right, 11 great guys. We are about to start The Great Gatsby, which is amazing for a ton of reasons. First of all, you're going to love it because it's a short novel. There's a lot of aspects about the book that I feel you guys can get into. There's sort of like, this guy's married to this woman, and she's dating this guy, but he's actually cheating on her, and it kind of becomes like high school relationships, right? But it's also really indicative of the modern time era. There's a lot of disenchantment and disillusionment with the way society is and kind of like moving forward with commercialism and the glitz and the glam of the 20s and everything, which you'll see a lot of great parallels between the postmodernist works that we looked at and these works right here in this period. The only difference is when we looked at postmodernism, we're talking about a lot of individuals who are coming home from World War II. And this movement, you got a lot of people who are coming home from World War I, which is a very sort of gruesome, hard-fought, if you've studied it at all in history, we're talking trench warfare. I mean, if the bombs and the gas didn't kill you, the disease and the cold would have gotten you, and just millions of bodies, strewn across Europe in this like intense battle. A lot of those individuals came home, like Hemingway. It became a big function of their writing. Of course, at this time, you also have the Great Depression. And you see that a lot in like Steinbeck's work, like The Grapes of Wrath, which, of course, deals with, the Dust Bowl and the farmers and the migrant workers and people from the Midwest and the West just moving all about doing anything and working for pennies just to get a check. So that brings us back to Gatsby. And Gatsby is based on the East Coast, obviously in New York, right, out on the island. There's East Eggers and West Eggers. And so basically what he uses is different geographics to sort of delineate or set apart the different social classes. Now, he uses some slang to sort of, establish who's the East Eggers and the West Eggers and people who do this kind of job and people who do that kind of job. And it kind of creates its own little world, if you will. And it's a really interesting study in sort of syntax and dialogue, which we'll totally get into class. And it's very intentional in F. Scott Fitzgerald's writing. And it's a ton of fun to get into, but I'm not going to lie that the first chapter is pretty heavy. So we're going to start out, we're going to kind of watch the intro of the movie, which is Baz Luhrmann. If you had me in ninth grade, we watched the Baz Luhrmann version of Romeo and Juliet. Very stylized, eye-catching, great use of imagery to sort of bring forward the themes and the intent of the writer. So hopefully that using that imagery will really help us get through that first, chapter or two. But a big part of that first chapter, outside of establishing the different social classes and the sort of new money versus old money, the East versus the West egg, is understanding why our main character here, or our narrator, right, Nick, has come out to New York, because he's from the Midwest. The Midwest is restless at this time. There's the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl and all that, like if you were to sort of parallel with a lot of works. But at the same time, there's this belief that, New York, right, it's the city that never sleeps, that there's a lot of money to be made out there, including a lot of money to be made through bootlegging, right, because we've also got prohibition going on at the time as well. So anybody that can sort of illegally move alcohol is going to make a ton of loot. So that's kind of like my setup for the book. Like I said, I think you guys will be jazzed that it's, get it, jazz, because it's the jazz era and the flappers, see what I did there? But you guys are going to be psyched that it's a short book. It's definitely something that we'll be able to rock out before the holiday. I have a really cool project that goes along with it. I think you guys are going to enjoy it. But just trust me when I say that we've got to get through the first chapter 2. Once we get into sort of the characters and the character development and the characterization as well. So we'll talk about some of the indirect and direct characterization that takes place, because some things Nick will tell you, because he's the narrator and he feels a certain way about each of these people. So he's going to directly tell you how he feels about each character, and even including himself, which he's quite contradictory sometimes about the way he talks about himself. So it's really cool to get into. But then there's also the actions and the words and the way other characters are affected by one another. And they really do. They start sort of playing off one another, and that becomes the sort of the catalyst, your rising action, right, into your climax, which is really just based off of all these characters sort of feeding and interacting off one another. But once we get into that and the action really starts to rise, you guys are going to love it. And then you'll totally dig the movie. And I can't think of a perfect way to sort of spend the last couple of days going into the winter break than rocking out the movie. So that's where we're at. I'll talk to you guys soon. Great job, those of you that already presented on your great Thanksgiving listen. And that's about it. No book needed to be bought this time around because we have plenty of copies at Riverside of The Great Gatsby. Unless you want to get your own for annotation, I always encourage that. But if not, we've got that covered as well. So have a great beginning of the week, and I'll see you guys soon.